Hello, everybody. Welcome back, everyone. How's it going? It's so nice to see you again. My name is Dave Medina. You know me as Davey's Eating a Sandwich, and this is The Sandwich Show. Welcome to another corner. We are starting part 2 of our college football preview, college football preview tonight. If you missed part 1, we covered the Group of 5 conferences, which includes a lot of great mid-majors and really solid teams. Teams like from San Diego State to Coastal Carolina to teams like Troy and many really fun teams that I feel like you can get a lot of good value from. So we got into those teams yesterday. Tonight we're going to cover all the teams from the big bowl, all the big dogs. We're going to cover Bama. We're going to cover Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson, Texas, Oklahoma, USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, all the Power 5 conferences as we know them today. And we won't know them today like this a year from now, will we? We covered that yesterday. We're getting to some season storylines too, with our guest tonight, John in Connecticut, who's back with us after hanging out with us yesterday. Really looking forward to this spot though, because we've got so many scenarios, so many coaches, a lot of people on the hot seat. There's so many scenarios we can get into tonight. So let's without further delay, let's go welcome our friend tonight. And he's our friend, John in Connecticut. Good to have you back, John. How's it going this evening?
What's up, Dave? Yeah, night 2 of our preview series here on the college football season. Thought we did a good job diving into the Group of 5 last night, but these are the conferences that tonight anyway, with the Power 5 leagues that have more, I guess, national intrigue and, for your kind of casual college football fan. So glad to be back, and let's dive into some of these storylines that you wanted to cover.
Yeah, 100%. So I mean, we've teased a lot of this yesterday, but I think we'll start with the obvious. I mean, the Pac-12 ending, the death of what was really just a cornerstone of college football. We've already covered some of the basics of it, but it started when UCLA and USC left for the Big Ten. We certainly saw that coming, but I think it was a little, at least for me, it was surprising that Washington and Oregon joined them so fast. Like, I thought that maybe they'd stick it out. I thought they'd try to, add teams to the Pac-12 and just restructure themselves that way. So seeing them bolt, and then seeing the Arizona schools in Utah and Colorado go to the Big 12, it was sudden, startling, and in the end, very sad to see the conference end. I mean, I've probably said a lot about it already, in the Discord and whatever else, but it's hard to kind of wrap your head around it, just to think that that's it. It's like, okay, like they have won a lot of national championships in the past. Obviously not in football terms, they haven't really won so much lately, but you talk about other sports, there's such a big deal in those too. So it's just tough to get around. You mentioned even yesterday that the ACC might be next and so on and so forth, but I mean, where do you even begin with this, John? I mean, you can't fault any individual team for leaving, but as you said yesterday, this could be a short-sighted move by all these schools, and we're going to see how it ends up for each of them as we go along. So let's get your thoughts on the Pac-12's dissolution, ending, the swan song season, the whole thing.
Yeah, it's sad. Just like we talked about last night, it's 100+ year conference of history. It's just like, poof, gone like that in just a matter of a day. Like everyone made a huge deal about Colorado leaving. Well, okay, like I didn't take that to be like, oh my God, the Pac-12 is over for good. Like Colorado has had one good season in the last 15 years in football. I mean, I know they've made a couple of tournaments in basketball, but they came from the Big 12 anyway, so they probably would rather be in that conference, all things being equal. So that wasn't a big loss in my opinion. I thought the conference could have, kind of regrouped after that and, maybe added some more members. But, then the rumors started flying around about, the Big Ten was going to come calling for the rest of the schools like Oregon and Washington. But I guess they had a deal, I guess, in principle. But I guess all the Pac-12 athletic directors or presidents, like that the day before it all fell apart, they were going to come to the table and come to an agreement and stay, like the Pac-9 at whatever it was at that point, and take the TV deal from Apple. That's what it was going to be, and we can kind of discuss the pros and cons with that. But and and they were going to stay together, and I assume they probably would have added a couple more schools, and they would have survived. But um, it all comes down to money, I guess, in the end for a lot of these schools. And I don't want to say stability because they would have been fine if they had stuck together, the remaining nine schools. But when the Big Ten is offering you, $60 million versus the Apple deal was only 30 million, not even that, maybe it was like 25 million, but there was like escalators where if they got so many subscribers, they could end up getting X, Y, or Z amount of money. Um, that's what you're going to choose every time. Basically, it all comes down to a money grab. But it's just really hard to kind of comprehend because, like we talked about last night, there's going to be like a competitive disadvantage. Like how many teams from the Big Ten are going to get into the college football playoff in the future? I mean, yeah, it's going to be 12 teams. Like, do they take their best 3 or 4? Like, can like Washington and Oregon and USC and UCLA guarantee themselves to be in that top four? Like, maybe one of the schools, maybe two at most. Like, there's Ohio State and Michigan are going to be there. Not to mention, you have solid programs like Wisconsin and Michigan State pops up every once in a while. So it's going to be hard. So they might have been better off sticking around in the Pac-12. I know the monetary aspect of it wouldn't have been as good for sure. I think the problem with Apple, just the perception that it's just all streaming. Like there's no linear component to it all. It's like they couldn't um like license, say package of a game a week to ESPN or something. It would literally be all on Apple TV. So there's that exposure part of it that you kind of lose being on a streaming service. Although it's almost kind of like the wave of the future, like the way things are going, like direct to consumer. Like you could see, cable's already almost long gone, but like all these streaming services too. Like it could be like you're just going to pick and choose basically what you want to buy. Long are the days of getting ESPN on your cable deal, even if you don't watch it. Like you're paying for ESPN. Well, they're losing all kinds of money basically with that deal at this point, and it's gonna go away. So we'll see what happens in the future. It might have been a mistake on their part to kind of turn down Apple and chase the money because where's the next big contract coming from if all the cable and ESPN it can't give you that money. So we'll see where this all lands up going forward. But just a really really sad situation that it had to play out like this. And Oregon and Washington leave, and then after that, like the Utah, Arizona, and Arizona State, they weren't gonna stick around. So you're just left with the four remainders at this point in the conference. And I don't know. I've seen a lot of scenarios about where they go from here, whether it be add more. We talked about it a little bit. Add some best of the rest kind of thing, or go independent. I don't know. It's just kind of sad because they're like left behind, and it's not their fault at all. Those schools anyway. Um, I did read a story that the Pac-12 commissioner, they had an offer of like 30 million back in the fall, and it's basically what the Big 12 has been getting or got
Mm-hmm.
from ESPN, Fox, and the Pac-12 commissioner, he said like no, like we want 50 million, and I guess he was just like laughed out of the room. So if you can blame anyone at this point, you can blame Larry Scott, their previous commissioner, and this new guy George Kladikoff, I think is you pronounce his last name. Just a complete mishandling of the entire situation and misreading of their perception,
Yeah.
I guess, and value. And it's sad because like there's going to be no more Pac-12. But one more thing, and I'll let have your comments. Like I can almost see this happening. Like as these conferences get so big and so like nationwide, like you could almost have either contraction and you could go back to what it was before as like it just gets too overwhelmingly large, or within the Big Ten you'll have like a West division and it'll basically be the old Pac-12. So I guess more to come on that in the future as the Big Ten and SEC consolidate their power.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've really covered a lot of the bases there. And I think I didn't make the point yesterday, but I've been telling people like off air this a lot. Like the biggest reason I love college football when I started watching it was because I really had enjoyed all the geographic rivalries with every single conference. And I think you're going to lose something when the sport becomes a national sport. And the Big 10 has kind of started some of this, and SEC started earlier than that. And the SEC is huge now. I counted 14 teams last time I counted them. I'm sure it's larger than that right now. The Big 54 we talked about yesterday, which is just absurd right now. And this is before they add teams for next season. Like I don't think the direction it's going is going to be something I'm going to enjoy personally, but it's not going to stop me from watching. It's just not going to be the same. But that's what that's my biggest disappointment. And I understand, people, it's all about the playoff, it's all about the money, et cetera, et cetera. But from the fan experience, I think you're losing quite a lot. I think teams fans of the Big 10 and the SEC don't care because it doesn't affect them. They get to keep all their teams. Everybody else is getting screwed. Big 12, Pac-12, anybody in the AAC, people who are followed, as you mentioned, Conference USA has completely changed in only 5 years. So it sucks. Things like Miami versus Florida State, things like Virginia Tech versus Miami in the old days, these rivalries were great. And not having that anymore is gonna hurt. And I think over time, I think people kind of start feeling that a little more. So that's kind of my biggest takeaway from this realignment, across the board. It's just I feel like we're losing more of it. It's just becoming just more of a generic minor league football. Which, listen, that's not
right.
I don't know.
I was going to say people are comparing it to the AFC versus the NFC, whatever you want to label it. Like Fox is AFC, ESPN is NFC, and they each have their national conference with Big 10 and SEC. But two things I want to mention.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about some of these schools that are just kind of skating by, just getting their piece of the pie, Vanderbilt, Rutgers, Northwestern, Indiana, schools like that. They could be kicked out. I could see that happening. How do you maximize more value? Get rid of the dregs of the league, and then you essentially have a super league of the top programs, and that could be a way to even make even more money. So that could happen in the future. We'll see. But the only thing I will say about that is somebody has to lose the games. So, Alabama might not be happy going 8-4 every year, or schools like that if they're just playing the top teams. So you need some buffer with some of those lower programs in there.
Yep.
To pad your wins essentially. But that could be a way for them to kind of maximize revenue in the future, almost like a college football Champions League, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
If you follow soccer. But and to your rivalry point, the Civil War, who knows if that's going to be played anymore? The Apple Cup, it's terrible. It's just, I'm with you. It's college football. Yeah, it's great on a national level, but it's all about rivalries, and conferences, in my opinion, should be somewhat regional. If you're more than 2 time zones in your conference, are you really a conference? It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Absolutely. That's a really great point. Sportsbook. I met friend Sportsbook Chris in Georgia a few weeks ago. He was in Southern California, so I was hanging out with him. And he made the point that you kind of teased it a little bit. You teased a little bit of this point too. He said, "What is going to stop the biggest teams from just making their own super league?" You literally, you made the same point. That absolutely could happen, and probably is going to happen. I actually think that's probably the next phase of this.
Yeah, and break away from the NCAA and do whatever the hell they want, basically, with football anyway. That's where this is headed. Maybe it's not going to happen instantly, but give it 10, 15 years. Who the heck knows where we're going to be in 10 years with this realignment business? I'll tell you what, though, like I said last night, the ACC is next to dissolve unless they do something.
Yeah.
So.
You're absolutely right. It's already happened with some of the conferences. I think the original Big East was probably the first of that. I missed the original Big East. It was a good conference. Especially in basketball, it was really good. But football too. They had a solid football conference. So too bad. Well, that's a good segue to the next topic, which is the new TV network deal. So it's going to be a little bit scattered. I think this year's odd because you're going to have multiple conferences. I mean, this actually does happen generally anyway, but whereas before you were having, I don't know, you had ESPN and and Fox were covering the Big Ten, and now it's like NBC and CBS. I don't know if ESPN's covering Big Ten in the next couple of years. Oh, they're not in it at all.
Completely shut out. Yeah,
oh,
there's
wow.
no Big Ten sports on ESPN.
That is interesting. Not necessarily a negative. It's just very interesting because they've been part of the ESPN family of networks for such a long time. And it's interesting to note that because I really hadn't seen them on the ESPN networks a lot in recent years. Like, it was mostly just like the lower level teams. Like, I didn't really see. I mean, yeah, obviously, maybe. I mean, I think Ohio State, Michigan was. No, I think that's been on Fox for like a while.
It's been on Fox for a while now.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they pretty much picked that as like their number one game every year. In in previous. Yeah, I think you're referring to like, you put on ESPN2 at noon and it's like Illinois and Minnesota with Beth Mowins on the call, with a nice 13-10 thriller. Those are your noon Big Ten games on ESPN2.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So I think it was kind of already heading in that direction. The SEC, I thought, I couldn't figure out when the SEC was actually going to be handed over to ESPN. It's going to be next year. So
I believe, it's next year. So this year it's kind of awkward. Like the CBS is showing both Big Ten and SEC games. Mm-hmm. And then next year it's going to be just Big Ten in that typical 3:30 spot. And I guess they're not changing the music either. So your CBS college football music will now serenade the Big Ten and it'll be funny to watch Gary Danielson completely flip now from defending the SEC with all his might to defending the Big Ten every Saturday. That'll be fun.
That'll be fun.
But so the Big Ten is on. It's like you get a triple header basically. You get like Fox, CBS, and then NBC all day on network TV, and then the rest of it is probably Big Ten network streaming, Fox Sports 1, Fox Sports 2. They're those are all the channels that they get picked up. I saw NBC has a few like Peacock exclusive games too, so that they try to get that in the mix. It's going to be all Big Ten all the time on basically network television.
I mean, we make jokes about that all the time, but you do still have some pretty solid teams in the Big Ten, and I'm sure a year from now it's going to be great because now you've got so much. You got a quarter of the Pac-12 in there now, and it's actually the best quarter too. It's like the top 25% of the Pac-12 is in the Big Ten now. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, basically, and they'll have they can play with it like a 10 o'clock time slot too because they have the West. So you'll have a game. If you could have a Big Ten game at like 12, 3:30, 7, and 10 for East Coast time, like all day and all night. You got a Big Ten matchup in there on like prime, network television.
So what's your pick there? And if you had to pick one, best of the SEC, but you got to do with Booger McFarland.
Oh gosh.
Or do you go like 15 hours of Big Ten football?
No, give me the actual football games, please.
That's fair. Yeah. I don't think anybody wants to see more Iowa or Rutgers or Nebraska. That's we probably can put that one off for a while. So yeah, that's the gist of it. I mean, it is going to be awkward for CBS. They've had a great legacy with SEC. Interestingly enough, that theme has been around forever. It's been around for like 35 years at least, and so it predates the SEC too. So it's
okay. So that's at least not say comforting, but like because we've only probably been watching. I've only been watching football for not that long.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good to know. It predates the SEC, so it's like they can't say it's like the SEC theme song. It's just the college football on CBS theme song, whatever conference that they're showing.
Yeah, but still, it's absolutely synonymous with the SEC these days. Like they've really built a great brand with it. It's a shame it's ending, but all things come to an end eventually, I guess.
Yeah, I mean maybe that might hurt them. Like, where's you would turn into CBS now at 3:30 to get the best SEC game of the week. Like, where are you going for that now? Like, will people like in the back of their minds be like, oh, like all right, let's turn to ESPN or ABC or whatever? Like, I don't know. Maybe that's something that will end up, affecting them in a negative way. But I guess we'll see about that.
Yeah, that's a really good question because I was kind of wondering what they would do with that. Would they do that? Would that be their new Saturday primetime game? Would it just be the SEC game of the week in prime? I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do with that. That's a good question. Iron Angry is in our chat tonight. Hello there. Our Buckeyes have a game on Peacock this season. Oh, the Bucks even have a game on Peacock. Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Are you surprised? That's surprising.
Well, they're trying to get people to subscribe. So
Yeah.
no, I'm not surprised. Like I know the first game of the year, Michigan plays East Carolina. I saw that's on Peacock.
Okay.
So I imagine the Ohio State game, it won't be like a marquee game. It'll be like probably a non-conference game, but or maybe like a lower, like if they play Rutgers or whatever, that might be on Peacock because they want people to subscribe to watch it. So not surprised.
Got you. Anyway, thank you very much for hanging out with us tonight. Stay tuned. We'll definitely have a lot of coverage of the Buckeyes and much of the Big Ten coming up in a few minutes, coming up later in the program. So, well, it's all very exciting stuff. CBS is certainly going to be very active this year. I mean, they've got so much coverage of the Group of Five too. Like, UConn will be, if you want to watch UConn football, like that's the place. Like CBS Sports Network.
Well, let's not go. I do like their team this year, but we won't go that far. Let's say if you want to watch a good game, maybe all their home games are on CBS Sports Network. So, which is actually, I'm surprised that they actually got that kind of deal because they were just a horrible program when they signed that. Now they're trending in the right direction. But the CBS Sports has them. They have the Army and Navy home games. They have Mountain West. They have MAC. They had Conference USA. I don't think they have AAC. I think AAC is all like ESPN. And then we talked about last night, Conference USA is doing like the Tuesday, Wednesday games during October, which is just fantastic.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, action in November, as we were talking about, CBS Sports does like some of the games and ESPN does other games. It's a really fun night of the week. Yeah. Okay. So let's go to the coaching moves. So we talked more, even though Satterfield was part of the Power 5 now, we got into it a little bit last night. So you're welcome to expand on that when we get to that Big 12 preview. What we'll do right now is we're going to do coaches in the hot seat. And John, I'm going to hand the torch to you. Who are your coaches on the hot seat coming up this year?
I mean, there's not like a surefire ones like there were last year. Like, remember, like we instantly all said, "Oh yeah, Scott Frost is like number one to go." Basically, he sure was. Like he was gone by the end of September.
Yep.
But I mean, you have some guys that have been struggling, but I wouldn't say like they're on the verge of getting fired. Like Jimbo Fisher, like this is a make or break year for him. But like I just don't know if they have. I mean, Texas A&M has a ton of money, but do they really want to pay him like $100 million for a buyout or something crazy like that? I don't know. If they have another disappointing year. Neil Brown at West Virginia, it definitely is on the hot seat. But again, it's not like no offense. Like, I don't think people are like clamoring about West Virginia football. Like it's not a huge market team. And same thing with Mel Tucker at Michigan State. They just paid him a ton of money, but very disappointing year last year. And we'll get to the Big Ten when we talk about them, but it's not been a good offseason for them. So those are kind of three guys off the top of my head that I wanted to mention that are kind of on the hot seat. I mean, you have some others here like the guy from Indiana, Tom Allen. They could be in for a rough season, and he might not last the year. Same with Jeff Hafley at Boston College. They've really been struggling. But again, like some of these guys might get another year because it hasn't been a complete like disaster or a sustained disaster. So those are kind of some names off the top of my head. I don't know who you had. It's kind of like your.
Did you mention Neil Brown in that rundown?
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay. So yes, I would have put him there for sure. Did we mention Mario Cristobal too? I have to think that he.
No, I didn't. That's an interesting one.
Yeah. Miami, I think it might be already kind of having enough of him, and I can kind of see that. Yeah, so we'll see.
We kind of called it too when he came from Oregon. We were like, this guy is not good at all, and like they were just so disappointing last year. I mean, run off the field by Middle Tennessee, like that was just embarrassing for Miami. Their problem is when they got rid of the Orange Bowl and now they play at the Dolphin Stadium, whatever the hell it's called now. I mean, they've been through a million sponsors naming that stadium, but there's like no home field environment or edge, and that's a huge thing, obviously, in college football, and they just don't have it.
It's an interesting observation. Like, people always rip the UCLA for not having a home field advantage, but if you knew where they played, it's ridiculous. It's like you literally have to go to completely opposite side of town. It's like a 20-30 mile drive to get to their stadium. It's dumb. Like, in my opinion, it's dumb. I think they'd have been better off just playing in a smaller, like 40,000 seat stadium somewhere else that was closer. I have actually explored the idea of them playing their home games at SoFi. I just don't know if the constituents would be up for that. Like, would SoFi go for it? Would that work? I think it'll work. It'd work a lot better than the Rose Bowl. The Rose Bowl's so far
UCLA
away.
would probably have to pony up some money to play there too.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's not cheap.
I'm pretty sure of that too. Like, it's because those are dates that the SoFi could use for concerts and things like that. So there's no doubt. Yeah, it would cost some
What
money.
about the stadium that the Chargers played in for like a year or two? That soccer stadium. How
Oh
far away is
yeah,
that from?
Dignity Health Sports Park. Yeah, good times. But that's actually just as far away though. It's just in a different direction.
Okay.
That's like 30 miles
So
south.
you might as well just play in the Rose Bowl.
Rose
then.
Bowl's
Yeah.
and Pasadena is cool too. So like I think it's almost the same thing actually. Good question though. Good question. But there are other ideas. I figure over time they could come up with something. I just feel bad because it's like I feel like UCLA actually has a pretty solid fan base. It's just that how are you going to sustain any kind of momentum like with attendance if you have to completely go out of your way to go to their stadium? Like that's just hard. So in USC the stadium's like right next to the campus. So, like it's a big difference. Big difference. So anyway, what were we getting in this about for? Oh yeah.
We started talking about coaches. And
Cristobal, yeah.
Wandered into stadium talk, but hey, no, it all plays a role in like how you evaluate like a program.
Yep.
Their perception and where they're going for
Yep,
sure.
absolutely.
I always felt like why do you need a 100,000 seat stadium, especially like UCLA and USC? Like they never sell those out. And no offense to the fans there, but that's just a hard thing to sell out.
Yeah.
I mean, I know. I think Tennessee and Michigan are close to that, but it's just for being in LA, like that's a hard thing to sell out, like 200,000 seat stadiums.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just because it's there, right? Like they're using it for the Rose Bowl at the end of the season, which is, by the way, I forgot to mention as part of that discussion. The Rose Bowl is practically dead now because when essentially the Pac-12 Big Ten arrangement, there's no Pac-12. Well, now what? Like,
right?
I think they lose all their scheduling leverage out of that, but who am I to say that? I don't know. But
well, I guess what they'll do now is they'll just say like the Rose Bowl is, how they want to use the bowl games as part of the playoffs. So the Rose Bowl will just be like a playoff game. So whoever, qualifies or at that point, will be there. So and maybe they'll get a Western team, an old Pac-12 team in there. So that's probably what the goal will be every year.
Do you think they'll have the leverage to keep insisting on that same 2 p.m. local time slot on January 1st like they always do?
I mean, I guess like at this point, like whatever. It's it's just.
I tell them back.
Matter who's playing, though, they're just gonna take their time slot. Yeah, sure, why not?
Well, it's an interesting spot because now this round is the semifinal. So honestly, it doesn't really matter when they play those games because they're gonna be playing over multiple days anyway. So it doesn't. I guess that's true. Yeah, that's a good point. All right, so yeah, I mean it's really good stuff. I think one article said that Billy Napier was on the hot seat, which really surprised me. I'm like, he'd only been at Florida for what, a year and a half? Like, why is he already in the hot seat?
They're impatient for sure in the SEC, but he's going to get more than he'll get like at least a third year, unless like there's all like crazy off the field allegations.
Right. I mean,
stuff going on, but yeah, he'll get a third year for sure.
I would think so, and honestly, I don't even think Florida's that bad. Like what they need is quarterback play. And that was the problem.
They brought in Graham Mertz, so I don't know. Do they really have a quarterback?
Yeah, that's rough. I think you might have to go back to you almost make the last year's quarterback situation look pretty sublime compared to that. Mertz, oh my goodness. That's funny. Okay, so that's the latest on coaches in the hot seat. Well, can you continue with predictions and things near the end of the show when we'll do our playoff predictions. So let's go to our conferences, and we're going to start with the ACC, or what's left of it. I mean, it's fine right now, but as you mentioned, John, it's only a matter of time. They're going to get blown up. So, I mean, really, we've talked about how Miami is kind of in a state of flux. NC State's kind of an enigma to me. I'm tired of buying into them. I'm kind of done with trying to think that they're good. I've had enough of them. So that really, for me, I feel like it comes down to like Clemson and Florida State. Those two teams are really loaded. We're gonna have some fun with this conference, even though there's a lot of bottom feeders in there. But those two teams at the top are pretty good. So, John, let's get your thoughts on the ACC.
Yeah, you couldn't have said it any better, Dave. The interesting thing about this year, and I think we might have mentioned this last night, but there are no more divisions in this conference.
Hmm.
So gone are the Atlantic and the Coastal. So you can actually get a Clemson Florida State championship game this year. Where in the past it would be like whoever comes out of those two teams. Recently, Clemson, because Florida State had been kind of down, had some rough years, and they'd play like a. I remember a couple of years ago they played like Virginia, who was 8-4. They play, they play Pitt like 9-3. Like it was an okay team they were playing. It wasn't like a true championship game. But now we're going to get that because, as I said, there's no more divisions. Clemson and Florida State are the clear uh, favorites heading into the year, and I wouldn't doubt that they both get to the championship game. I mean, we can talk about some of the other contenders, but when you look at Clemson, DJU transfers to Oregon State. We'll get to that. Um, get to the Pac-12 later, but there was a huge call last year for Cade Klubnik to start all year. He finally did get some playing time in the ACC championship game, and he really shined. Did not have a good bowl performance against Tennessee, which might worry you a little bit, but he's the day one starter here. Clemson's always loaded on defense. They're just gonna go through and with their recruiting and replenish their defensive line. Um, but Klubnik is really kind of the question mark for the entire team. If because that was the problem with Clemson last year. Their offense just really struggled. So if he's at an elite level, there'll be no they'll like an NFL title contender. I still think they're going to make the ACC championship game with Florida State, but that's kind of where the state of Clemson is at the moment. It comes down to their quarterback play. One thing about Clemson is they don't really use the transfer portal as much as some of these other schools. But that's kind of maybe why they've slipped a tad over the last 2 years. They were winning, going undefeated, winning 11 games, and it's kind of been a little bit of a drop off since then, and they haven't really been as active. And they might have to change that moving forward. And like I said, Florida State is the clear other favorite in this league. 17 starters return with Jordan Travis. Mike Norvell's done a really nice job there, kind of getting the program back to national prominence. They had that huge win against LSU last year, and it kind of put their name back, I guess, on the map. They did have a couple other losses that kept them from. They did lose to Clemson, so that's again they play in the regular season, and they'll probably meet again in the ACC championship game. But those are the two teams that should top this conference. After that, like it's just a lot of kind of mediocrity. North Carolina is going to get some hype because of Drake May, and he's a great quarterback. Their offense put up just a number of points, and he's going to be a legit NFL prospect. But you just can't trust Mac Brown, number one. And number two, their defense is just really, really poor. And if that continues again this year, there's just going to be in shootouts every game. Remember the first game last year when it was like 63-61 against Appalachian State, and they won it just because of Drake May. And they're going to have to kind of do that sort of thing again this year. If Mac Brown wasn't the coach, maybe I'd be a little bit more fond on them, but I just can't. I just can't get in on them. Same with Miami and like we just talked about Cristobal. I mean, they should be much better. They should be better than their talent. Their record should be better than what their talent has because they have a lot of solid players. I mean, Tyler Van Dyke is returning at quarterback, and they've been recruiting well. It's just can they put it all together? They I don't think they can get to that next level and make the championship game. And then you have some other kind of middling teams like Pitt. They always have a great defense, very good on the offensive defensive line under Narduzzi. They just kind of seem to churn out those players. Like seem like they put guys in the NFL on the defensive line every year. And they do get, I think, an upgrade at quarterback. Phil Jurkovec comes in from Boston College. Now he was pretty bad the last couple of years, but I think he was hurt. And just this offensive line there was terrible last year at Boston College, and they didn't really have many. The coaching wasn't great too, so maybe an improvement. because he's definitely shown flashes, but I think that's an upgrade on their quarterback position. And like I said, they're always pretty good on the lines. So they'll be kind of in the middle of the pack. Same with NC State. The interesting thing about them is Brennan Armstrong comes over from Virginia, and he brings the offensive coordinator, Robert and who, when they were together at Virginia, he put up like record-setting numbers. So that's kind of the hope for NC State. That's what they want to do, is kind of run that offense, like the four wide kind of almost air raid like offense, and hope they can catch that magic from a few years ago when those guys were working together. And NC State is another team that's always has like a solid defensive line, and defense in general. So they kind of hoping to pair those two together. Um, Louisville is an interesting team because Jeff Brom comes over as coach, replacing Satterfield, and he brings Jack Plummer, who was his former quarterback at Purdue, and they won the ACC schedule lottery, so they could be maybe a sleeper pick if Clemson or Florida State were to falter. Louisville might be a team to look at, or at least to bet over their win total. I think Louisville's going to have a good season, but they're definitely a team I think on the rise. I mean, we've seen Brom take like Purdue to the Big Ten championship game and kind of do better than expectations. So I think that was a really great hire from them. And I guess the last school I'll mention from the top of the conference is Duke. Really unexpected last year. They were projected to be one of the worst teams in the conference. And Mike Elko came in and just did a fantastic job. It really kind of pulled a winning season out of nowhere and turned Riley Leonard into one of the better quarterbacks in the ACC. Like, he's a dual threat quarterback. And he really turned around their defense too. Like 2 years ago, they were giving up like 45, 50 points a game in conference play. And they really improved that last year. The guy is just a tremendous coach. Their schedule's much tougher this year, but I think they're going to be in the top half of the league. Now, I guess I'll mention one more team, Wake Forest. The big news about them is Sam Hartman transferred out from Wake Forest to Notre Dame. And so they lose their star quarterback. But again, a lot of solid coaches in this league. I will say that. Some I wish, like, if I wished like Elko was coaching North Carolina, like that would be just tremendous. But it is what it is. Wake Forest coach Dave Clawson's just done a great job there. So even though they do take, I think I'll step back with Hartman leaving. I think they'll be a bowl team. So those are kind of thoughts on like the top and mid half of the conference. I mean, I don't know if you want to dive into the bottom of the ACC, but those are kind of some initial thoughts.
We forgot to put Dino Babers on that hot seat list.
Is that right?
I forgot about that. Man, so sheer in that program. Like, yeah, I can't believe he's still there. That's sort of my takeaway.
That's the thing. Like, some of these ACC schools are just going to be like left in the dust when all this, like when North Carolina and Clemson and Florida State, like in Miami, end up leaving the conference. Like, what's going to be left? It's going to be like it's Syracuse, Boston College. Like, we can make the Big East again. Like, let's go. Like, we can get the band back together. Like, yeah. It's going to probably end up working out like that. But yeah, the bottom teams: Syracuse, Boston College, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech. Virginia looks like they're going to be like one of the worst teams in the country this year. But yeah, those are kind of the initial thoughts on the ACC. I'd be happy to talk about some of the bottom teams if you like, but what are your thoughts on some of these other teams?
No, I mean, the bottom teams are just going to be hilarious. Like the only thing that you really can watch out for with Syracuse is that they often give Clemson a tough time when they play against one another. I mean, that's really it. That's pretty much all they can really look forward to this year. So I'm not going to waste too much time on that. You mentioned Boston College. Yeah, there's no reason to watch Boston College at all. That is a rough watch. So yeah, I mean, you've really hit a lot of this on the screws, and you really have a good point about the coaches. Like, I do like a lot of these coaching hires. I mean, it's clearly Louisville's a nice step up from Satterfield. I agree. Yeah. So Clemson and Florida State. It's not the biggest slam dunk ever, but I really do think Clemson's going to be very, very good this year. And just to be fair, like, they weren't even bad last year. Like, their record was very good. It's just that you never really saw them being a championship team because DJU would often hold them back. I think they'll have more upside than they did a year ago. I think this will be a really, really good team. As you mentioned, defensively, they're going to be great. Even without Venables back there. And they've been without Venables for about a year and a half now. So it'll be really interesting stuff. Big props to Norvell, the way he's recruited. I've been looking at the recruiting rankings. FSU's like right there. like the last like 3 or 4 years. They are doing a really good job getting players. And it's like, of course, like Florida State is built to win. Like if you have the environment, you have a lot of great talent down there. You just have to have somebody with his head on straight. So Norvell, and then again, this is where the college football fan bases and what is the word, where the fanaticism of college football fans gets really annoying with me. It's like, dude was on the hot seat too. It's like, really, like give him like a couple years. He obviously proved it on other programs, and now here we are. Like he just needed another year, and they're looking pretty good. So. Yeah, anyway, that's all this just to say, like, yeah, I mean, I support everything you said.
Florida State versus LSU again in week 1. That's just a fabulous game.
Yes.
I think it's on the Sunday, too, of Labor Day. So,
Nice.
like, there's no NFL that week because, they don't start till the following Sunday. So we'll get LSU, Florida State again that night. But you can, earlier in the day at noon on Sunday, you can watch Northwestern and Rutgers. So we up into that game.
So
on
we're
CBS,
gonna go.
Too.
We're gonna go with like an interim or some new coach replacing the departed Pat Fitzgerald versus a team who should have kicked out their coach and haven't yet. But I probably we haven't gotten to the Big Ten yet, but I can't wait to ask this question. How many games do you give Shiano before he's dumped? Like, would you give him the whole season? Would you give him half the season? Like, what?
Yeah, I would, because it's just such a tough schedule to win, and a tough conference to win in. I mean, especially because the Big Ten, they're going to get rid of divisions, but it's not this year. So they still have the East and West. I mean, they have to play Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, and Michigan State every year. And that's just like almost 4 losses right off the jump.
It's true.
And then it depends on who you draw from the West division. Like if you get Wisconsin or Iowa, like there's another, like you already have 6 losses. Like it's just almost impossible for him to get any traction going. Like they need to. That's why that Northwestern game is huge for them, because it's a conference game. They need to win that one. Like it's a legit conference game they can win.
Absolutely.
In week 1. So if they have any chance of like making a bowl game, they have to win that game.
Yep.
Although they're favored by 7 points, I don't know.
I don't know. I don't like that.
You want to lay 7 with Rutgers? I don't know.
I don't like that. I don't like that either. So that's the gist of it for the ACC. So no division. So we pretty much gave you our top 2 both ways. Definitely a better ACC than I think we were used to, which is good. It's good. It'll definitely be a little better than normal than the past years. So let's move to the Big 12. Oh boy. There was a lot of talk about the Big 12 being the best conference in the Power 5 last year. It's an interesting query, or it's an interesting topic, because I don't think you're talking about them being the best because the people at the top are not going to match up with the people in the SEC at the top. But if you want to go with depth, I think Big 12 is right there. It is such a great conference. Interesting thing, it looked like the projections have Texas as the odds-on favorite to win the conference this year, which is a unique position. Usually to Oklahoma. Oh, you're not buying it. Interesting.
I don't know. It's tough. Like we'll get to it. Like you said. I mean, they're probably not going to have a team in the playoff because all these teams are going to beat each other.
Yeah, that's fair. It's fair. It is going to be a very rugged schedule for anybody in this conference. And speaking on that point, the story of last year's Big 12 was actually TCU. They made it all the way to title game. They really beat the odds. How many weeks were we talking about how they gutted out a win and they shouldn't have won?
Almost every week.
Yeah. I am expecting a huge regression to the mean for that team this year. I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on them as we do the preview. Kansas, I'm kind of wondering about the same thing. They had a really great start, although they came back to it a lot quicker. Like I think it was like halfway through the season they started to really start losing games. But they are doing well. I mean, I don't want to hit them too hard there, because like they had a very good year. So, not a huge surprise the way it ended. K-State's an interesting call. Iowa State, none of us are buying that. I'm sure if Ron were here, I'm sure he'd be down on them too. Like Campbell, now did he move? Is he
not
still
buying in?
Yeah, you can't buy him.
He's still there. I'm not buying in.
Nah,
nope, not at all.
same. No way. So the team, I feel like the teams with question, and Oklahoma State is now. Let's go the opposite side of the coin. Oklahoma State continues to be a dependable winner every single year. Doesn't mean they're going to win a title or anything like that, but Gundy's still Gundy. Give it to him. Like, he's got that team competitive, playing with fire. I think it could be another solid year for Oklahoma State. And then Baylor, I'm gonna let you take on Baylor. I don't know what to feel. I don't have a feel for them, honestly. Oklahoma too. Like, I think they're, I don't know. Venables doesn't have not the same cachet as Riley did before. Having them before. So I'm not the biggest Oklahoma guy right now. So John, with that setup, let's get your thoughts on the Big 12.
Yeah, like we talked about, I mean, this could be one of the deepest conferences from top to bottom for sure. Like, all these teams are going to beat up on each other. But when you're trying to make a prediction, you got to try to find like some flaws that you don't like in in each team, and you kind of pointed some of them out. I'm completely out on Iowa State. Campbell, they had their chance with the Brock Purdy, Brees Hall, team that was loaded on defense, and they couldn't win a close game. Like, they lost so many close games in like back-to-back years, and then they lost the Big 12 championship. Like, and now it's just kind of going downhill. And now all their players are getting busted for gambling, including the starting quarterback Hunter Deckers. So who knows what's going to happen with that in the next few weeks? And you got to be out on Iowa State. I mean, I guess there's really nothing else to do in Iowa except for gamble.
What were they gambling on? Like, I wonder.
Their own games.
Their own
Hunter
games.
Deckers,
Oh, that's rough. Yeah, you can't do that.
Like, I mean, I'm all for gambling. Like, if you want to bet on like another sport or whatever, like, I don't care. But
yeah,
you draw the line like betting on your own game.
You can't
like,
do that.
You got to know you can't do that, right? Like,
right.
Even one guy, I mean, he was smart. Like, it wasn't Iowa State, it was Iowa. Like, he's betting the under on an Iowa game. Like, good for you, buddy. Like, like, that's not a gamble. Like, that's an investment, because that's easy money. But you can't.
I don't think you should get busted for that.
Right, exactly.
That's what everybody's doing.
Yeah, right, exactly. But just in general, like, you can't bet on your own game, or you're like a player prop of your own, or like on your own team. Like, it's just complete no. And they got busted. But so we'll see what happens there. Oklahoma State, they've kind of had Gundy's always had a solid team. I just don't think they're quite as good as the top. Spencer Sanders is not returning. So I don't know. I'm not a big fan about Oklahoma State this year. I think it's going to be like Gundy will always get them to like a bowl game. But you really saw them kind of fall off towards the end of last year. I think that'll kind of continue. Baylor, I do like Baylor in just that they had a down year last year, but they were just so hyped coming off of their Big 12 championship the year before. And so they really couldn't kind of handle that pressure, and their defense did take a step back. But I really like Aranda, their coach, and Blake Shapen returns at quarterback. I just I don't know. They're good, but like, there's gonna be so many toss-ups in this conference, like in terms of just on a week-to-week basis. So I could see them making the top two, but I'm not quite 100% there on them. Texas Tech has gotten a lot of momentum. They return a number of starters. They've been doing great on the recruiting trail. This guy Joey McGuire has like really made inroads. Like, I think he was a former high school coach, if I was reading correctly, in Texas, or an assistant or something. And he's really made some good inroads with recruiting, and they have a really talented team, like 11 starters returning on offense. Like, they're a team to watch out for. And we know Lubbock is a really tough place to play. Especially we get teams going out there taking that trip. Kansas, what a turnaround that they've done with Leipold. He basically came in like in almost summer practice the first year he was there, and they still won a few games. And then last year, they started off like with 5-0, 6-0, one of the best offenses in the country, and that's going to continue this year with Jalen Daniels. Bet the over in Kansas games. Like, no one's really going to stop them, but they're not going to stop anyone either. That's kind of going to be the motto with them. 10 starters back on offense, like I mentioned, Daniels. And even if he were to not play, Jason Bean, their backup quarterback, who started a number of games, is returning as well. So they're going to score a ton of points. They're going to give up a ton of points. That kind of would lead to like maybe a 6-win season, which isn't going to really get the job done. I agree with you on TCU taking a step back. I think people aren't going to realize how important Max Duggan was to the team. Obviously, he made the Heisman Trophy ceremony. He didn't win, but he was there. And he was just such a just relentless player. Like with some of those runs that he was doing. They lose Quentin Johnson to the NFL and some of their other players on offense. Plus all those close games they won. So yeah, TCU is going to take a step back for sure. So that kind of leads me to the top three that I kind of like: Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas State. Uh, I agree with you on Oklahoma. I'm just not seeing it with Venables. And he's supposed to be like a defensive guru, and it was really bad last year, their defense. Just I don't really see how it's going to get much better this year. They only have 6 returning starters. Uh, they do have Dylan Gabriel returning. We've seen Oklahoma when they have all their pieces on offense, they can score, but I mean, I don't really see them stopping anybody either. So they were only 6-7 last year. So I don't see how they're going to make this huge jump for being in the top of the conference. I mean, they're certainly going to win some games, but I don't think they're going to be, um, in the top of the league. So I think the Big 12 is going to come down to Kansas State and Texas. I know we talked about Texas being back, but uh, you know Quinn Ewers is there. If he doesn't play well, you got Arch Manning. I don't even know if he'll be ready to play, but we saw some really good stuff from Ewers last year, especially that Alabama game, which they really should have won. They're pretty loaded in terms of just their talent that they have. They brought in some really nice transfers. So, you hate to say, quote, Texas is back, but I think they're going to be in the championship game along with Kansas State again, who's just as solid as they come. I know they do lose Deuce Vaughn. He's with the Cowboys now, but Will Howard returns. Their offensive line is just fantastic. I believe, yeah, they return all 5 starters on their offensive line. There doesn't matter; they're just going to run all over you. Not as many starters returning on defense, but I just trust the program. I trust their coach, Kleiman. So I'm in on Kansas State. So I think it'll be Texas and Kansas State. I think that's your Big 12 championship game. They do play at Texas in the regular season, so it could be a rematch in the championship game. They played last year and they only lost by a touchdown, and I think that's what it'll end up being again. I think Kansas State will find a way to get back to the Big 12 title game, and maybe they'll win it again. We didn't mention the 4 newbies yet coming into the conference. I think those 4 will be kind of at the bottom of the league: BYU,
Yeah.
UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston. If I had to say who's going to be the best of the 4, I'll give it to UCF just because of Malzahn. And, it's a tough, it'll be a tough trip for any of those teams to go into the UCF home field. They're
Yeah.
usually really good there. Same thing with BYU is going to that's a tough place to play too at BYU.
That's true. Yeah.
And then we mentioned, I think Cincinnati's in for a really rough year with Satterfield. Not returning many starters at all. Emory Jones is going to be their quarterback. Like, bet the under on Cincinnati. And then Houston, I think Holgerson, you never know what you're going to get from him. It's a step up on their schedule for sure. So I don't know if those of the 4, like I said, I think UCF will at least have some upset wins and make a bowl game. I don't know about the rest of those teams. I think it might be a struggle in the first year. So all in all, like I said, my pick for the top 2 will be Texas and Kansas State in the Big 12.
Yeah, I echo all that. I pretty much I did most of my analysis in the front end of this segment, so I won't expound on that too much. But we circle back to a couple of over-unders. You mentioned Cincinnati under win total, so their over-under's 5.5. I think under makes a lot.
Wow.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah, let me pull up their schedule. Like, I don't see 5 wins on that schedule. Hold on, let me have my trusty magazine right here in front of me. I can pull it up.
All right.
All right, so Eastern Kentucky, we'll give them that one. At Pitt's probably a loss. Miami, Ohio, will give them a win. Home to Oklahoma, I mean, probably not. That's a loss. At BYU is a loss. We'll give them Iowa State. Baylor, loss. At Oklahoma State, loss. UCF, maybe. At home, maybe. But I don't know. Then at Houston, at West Virginia, Kansas at home. Yeah, I don't see 6 wins here
Yeah.
on this schedule at all.
No, I'm with you. I mean, that's a big step up in competition, week to week. So now,
And plus, with the coaching change
yeah,
and losing all of players, like yeah,
yeah, yeah,
under
yeah,
Cincinnati.
yeah. I'm with you. And TCU's over under for win totals is 7.5. And for me, I looked at that. I'm like, that's an easy under. Like, I think it's going to be probably 7. Like but I don't see 8 or more. I mean,
Let me look at their schedule.
stranger things have happened though.
Well, they could start pretty good because
Yeah,
they get Colorado, Nichols at Houston, SMU, West Virginia at Iowa State, BYU. So they could start pretty good. And then it gets tougher after that at Kansas State, at Texas Tech, Texas Baylor, at Oklahoma. So you need them, yeah, 7 or 8. So you need them to maybe get upset in the first 6 or 7 weeks, a game, and I think that's a good play.
oh man, if the Colorado game's in Boulder, that has all the makings. I
It
will.
is not, unfortunately. It is in
Oh,
Fort Worth.
okay. That's
The line though is TCU. Like I think they're minus 3 touchdowns. I think it's minus 21 against
I
Dion.
think we take a chance on prime time.
Prime, yeah.
Yeah. That's a good. Yeah, I'm gonna. Yeah, we'll see if we get an upset alert in that game. We'll see. I mean, all right. So that's the Big 12, everyone. Let's move ahead to the Pac-12 as we know it. Last year of the Pac-12, by all accounts, it's sad, like I said, but man, what an ironic situation that so many teams in the Pac-12 were rated to be really good. 4 teams. I believe the teams are Oregon, USC, Washington, and if I'm remembering correctly, the fourth one is UCLA. They're all projected to be very good this year, and it's just so unfortunate that this is like going to be such a great year for this conference, and it's not, and it's going to be blown up after it. Like it's just, what do you even do? So anyway, but John, I'll give it to you for your preview. I'll give my thoughts after the fact. Oh, and Deion's making his debut with Colorado, so that should be exciting for no other reason, just the juice of that. And his kid's gonna play for him, so yeah, I mean,
Yeah, Shador is going to be the starting quarterback
cool.
apparently. Yeah, the Colorado's a completely they're like a mystery team because they have a whole new team. Like they brought in transfers from everywhere, and I mean they had to. They were 1-11 last year, so they had to remake the entire roster. But like, who knows how all these teams are gonna, all these players are gonna mesh together? We don't know. So it's kind of wait and see. Like you can't really think they're going to do that well, but who knows? Maybe they'll surprise us. But yeah, they're a mystery team in all this. But yeah, I mean, if this is the last year of the Pac-12 as we know it, well, it is. But in terms of like the name of the Pac-12, it's going to go out with a bang because I could see like 6 teams here being ranked. USC, Utah, Oregon, Washington, Oregon State, UCLA, the top of the conference. I could see them all being top 25 teams. I mean, this is a really, really good conference. And it's like you said, pretty sad when you really look at it from this perspective. Like all these teams are going away to another to other conferences. But yeah, I mean, I guess you have to start with USC. Caleb Williams, fresh off the Heisman, is he going to get 2 in a row? We'll see. I don't know. Like they're certainly going to put up a lot of points. I mean, their second year in Lincoln Riley's system. Uh, a bunch of other offensive playmakers returning. The question is, like always with Lincoln Riley, is their defense, and it cost them in both Utah games last year and in the Tulane game in the bowl game. Just giving up a ton of points. Uh, they won kind of the schedule lottery, and that they get Utah, Washington, and UCLA at home. Their only road trip or really tough road trip in the Pac-12 is at Oregon. So the odds are they'll probably, again, this is another conference where there's no division, so it's just the top 2 will make it. They'd probably be able to outscore a lot of these teams, but the question is their defense. And then, if we remember Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma, they always seem to have one game when they just kind of slipped up, and maybe that'll happen here. But yeah, USC is definitely in contention. Utah is right there with Whittingham, rock solid as they come, like almost unbeatable at home, up there in Salt Lake City. Their question mark with them is Cam Rising. He tore his ACL. back, I believe in the bowl game in the Rose Bowl. 'Cause I think I remember if I remember his backup came in. So the question is he going to be ready to start the year? Um, I don't know. We'll have to see in the next week or two what we get from like practice and whatnot. But if he's back, they're they're going to be really good again. Like they're really talented. Um, they're always going to have a solid defense. 9 starters returning there. I mean, like they beat up USC a couple times last year, so I mean they're going to be right there in the conference. Um, if you go down the list here, Oregon is going to be a really good team. Bo Nix, you see the signs in New York City like clamoring Bo Nix for Heisman. I mean, I don't know if I want to go that far, but it's the year 2 under Dan Lanning. It's still kind of amazing how a guy coming over from Georgia goes to Oregon, but hey, it's working out so far. I mean, they had a really good year, first year 10-3, so it's year 2 in his system. I mean, they can only get better there. And they have a bunch of returning starters, 16 in total, 8 on both offense and defense. So they're going to be right in the hunt. UCLA does replace a lot of production, obviously, with DTR and Charbonnet leaving for the NFL. But they have arguably one of the highest rated recruiting quarterbacks starting for them in Dante Moore. But even if he doesn't start, they brought in, we talked about it last night, Colin Schlee from Kent State, who was a really good quarterback in the MAC. I mean, I know the MAC to the Pac-12 is a big step up, but this guy was really talented. And Chip Kelly, it's a system that he runs. Like you can put probably a number of athletic quarterbacks in there and they can make it work. But the big transfer they got is Carson Steele from Ball State. Like if you remember watching him in action, this guy, like he's got long flowing blonde hair coming out of his helmet, just running over people.
Yeah.
Like that's a huge addition for UCLA. So they have 9 starters returning on defense. I know their defense really struggled last year, but they can only improve on that side of the ball. So UCLA will be a contender. Washington, what a difference last year was to this year. I'm sorry,
Or
2022
to the previous year. Yeah.
when they had when they had Jimmy Lake and I always loved Andy's rants and comments on them, but going from that limp offense to what they have now with Kalen DeBoer, I mean the guy just wins everywhere he goes. And now Michael Penix returning. The Pac-12 could have like 3 Heisman worthy candidates with Williams, Bo Nix, and Michael Penix. Their offense is gonna soar. The question is again, like a lot of these teams on the kind of the defensive side of the ball. And again, this could be a conference where all the top teams kind of beat up on each other, which is what you worry about because, like I said, there's 6 really good teams here in this conference. But yeah, Washington is going to be right there for in contention with this top group. And then the final team in this group is Oregon State, like the little Beavs. They're going to be. They won 10 games last year. I mean, and they should have beaten USC. Like, if they had a competent quarterback, they might have gone undefeated last year. Because their defense was tremendous, and their quarterback just kept turning over the ball. But now they get an upgrade. You would think DJU comes in from Clemson. They're not going to ask them to do much. They're just going to kind of have them run the system they have there. And they're just going to run through people. I remember in the Oregon game last year, they were down.
Who could forget that game? Wow.
17 or 20 points, and they just ran the ball like 20 straight times and had a comeback and let Oregon, mess up on special teams and just, poor coaching and whatnot. And there were some 4th down decisions that were pretty boneheaded. But, Oregon State's going to be right there too. So any of these top 6 teams, I think I would not be surprised to see them in the Pac-12 championship game. And I think, just like the Big 12, they're going to kind of cannibalize each other because all these teams are just really good. So if I had to choose, I mean, I have to really look at the schedules of all of them. I did say USC has a fairly easy schedule compared to the others because they only have like one tough road game or of the top teams, they play them on the road. But just for our quick, chat here, I'm going to say USC, and I'm going to go with. Let me just check their schedule for a second. Yeah, I'm gonna go with USC and Washington. That's kind of going to be my
So
two teams in
that,
the Pac-12 for the championship game. And yeah, those top six are just like I said, anybody can really can beat anybody. And then after that, you have like teams with new coaches, Arizona State, Colorado, Stanford. We kind of talked about them, and then like Washington State and Cal are just kind of middle of the road. But there's a clear gap between the top six and then the bottom six in the league. I'd be interested to hear your feelings on the conference this year. I know you're kind of more tuned in than probably most people living out
yeah.
on the West Coast.
Well, that might be true. I mean, you gave a really comprehensive rundown. That's pretty much spot on. I mean, I couldn't really disagree with most of that. USC's certainly the team to beat in this conference, I believe, this year. I mean, Caleb Williams really was next level. It's just like you said. It's just really a matter of what they can do to improve defensively. It's an ongoing problem with Lincoln Riley's teams wherever he's been. So that's just an obvious point of concern. If they can address that and improve upon it, I think they'll definitely be there. And so I absolutely think they'll make the Pac-12 championship game, because even this, you factor in the games that they might lose one game or two games that they shouldn't. That happens every year with USC. So, but even if you have that, I still think they're going to be very good this year. So Washington's a great pick, especially because of what they bring on defense. Like, their defense is very good. I still am going to go with Oregon. I just think the experience of Bo Nix at this point, I mean, he is a liability with turning the ball over, although he didn't really show it last year. Still, I mean, that's just an ongoing thing. But with that said, I just think that team looks like a team that can play. And I just think and beating them at their home, like, who has the tougher home field right now, Oregon or Washington? They're both good, but I think Oregon's probably, at least historically, a little better. So, I mean, obviously, they did lose a home game that was key in the season, but overall, I do think it's going to be Oregon and USC representing in the Pac-12 title game. But Utah's going to be, if Cam Rising's like back to being healthy like he was before, then it's probably Utah that will end up taking that other spot. But for now, I'll say Oregon and USC.
Yeah, Utah's definitely going to have a say in it. All these teams will. It's going to be fascinating to watch this Pac-12 race. Like, Pac-12 after dark is going to be wild this year.
Yeah,
and that's sad too. Like, this will be the last Pac-12 after dark year.
Yeah,
it makes me sad.
I'm sad about it too. I had a lot of great moments. Arizona State was always pesky at home. Like, that was a fun. That's an example. You mentioned Oregon State, always in the mix. Yep. A lot of great games there too in Corvallis. Like,
no more
why?
Herm Edwards to bet against.
What was that?
Said no more Herm Edwards to fade this year. Unfortunately,
you're right.
he is gone.
He is gone indeed. I'm kind of just, honestly, I thought he was doing okay for a while. I mean, he could have done worse, but
he brought in a lot of good players. I mean, you can't deny that. It just kind of never, they had like a lot of. There's like allegations of like improper like recruiting and all that, and that's kind of what ended up being the downfall. And they just kind of, I wouldn't say quit on him, but like they just couldn't have him there anymore.
Yeah, that's fair. It's fair. Yeah, and they did have their share of like bad losses. I remember one time UCLA just destroyed them in a game. Like, what happened here? Like, that was kind of ridiculous. So
I mean, they lost to Eastern Michigan at home. That's what got him fired.
Yeah,
in like week 2 or 3 last year. So
right. Although it turned out Eastern Michigan was actually pretty good, but still, regardless, that's a game you got to win. That's a game you got to win.
A MAC team should not be winning at a Pac-12 home field for sure.
Absolutely. So so I'm looking forward to Pac-12. I mean, soak it in because this will be the last year. So on we go. So to the conference that's going to take most of their teams, the Big Ten. But even despite that, I think even in the years to come, I think the teams that are going to always be the favorites are Ohio State and Michigan. And it's just funny how after 8,000 conference realignments and new TV deals and all the generations of players have come and gone, Ohio State and Michigan are still the top 2 programs in this conference. And honestly, has it ever really been challenged? I was kind of thinking through the years, like, at least one of the two is great. So I can't really. Maybe one year there was Michigan State. Maybe one year there was Penn State. But really, it's been those two. So I have no reason to pick against that this year. But I will say I'm not a big Ryan Day guy at all. I don't think he's great. I don't have any real argument to support that. I just don't think he's great. You'd think they'd be a lot more dominant than they are, specifically on offense. And honestly, I just don't think they really do much on offense. They're good enough to beat most teams, which is good. But I don't know. We'll see. Michigan, on the other hand, I feel like has got some juice. I think there could be some potential. We'll see. It's funny that Harbaugh survived all that. A lot of people wanted him gone about 2 years ago. I'm telling you.
That's true. He was on our hot seat list a number of
He
years.
was.
He turned it around.
He really.
Now look at him.
Absolutely. So give it up for Harbaugh. He survived the odds there. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Big Ten.
Yeah, and he survived buying a recruit a hamburger, and he's going to be missing the first 4 games. But don't fear, Dave. I think they can handle it. They're scheduled for the first 4 weeks: home to East Carolina, home to UNLV, home to Bowling Green, and home to Rutgers. I think he'll be good.
He'll
I
be
think
fine.
Michigan will be fine in that stretch. But yeah, it's this is a conference. Again, they are not going to the one standing model. They're still doing divisions this year. So it's going to be a Royal Rumble here between Michigan, Ohio State, and I've seen lots of people very, very high on Penn State, and I can see why. So it's clearly a 3-team race. You could see a scenario where they all finish. I believe it. Yeah, they play 8 or 9 conference games. Looks like they play 9, so they can all finish 8-1 in the conference with each other's loss coming again. So it's going to be a complete 3-way tie, and then we'll see how that plays out with like who gets to go to the Big Ten championship game. It's going to be fascinating to play out, to see that play out. Obviously, Michigan, it's loaded. JJ McCarthy is back. Blake Corum is back. 8 starters on offense, 7 on defense. Doesn't matter that Harbaugh's missing the 4 games. I mean, they're just going to run through everybody. Just a really loaded team. I think they're a little bit better than Ohio State, but they have the game at Penn State. So this is where like the 3-way tie plays into the mix. So like they could beat Ohio State, but then Ohio State would beat Penn State. So that it'll just be like a three-way thing here. But yeah, they cleared the top 3 teams. Ohio State, obviously they need to replace CJ Stroud, but like anything kind of recently in Ohio State, it's just a system where they just plug and play these different receivers. Marvin Harrison Jr. came onto the scene last year. I mean, they lose Olave and Wilson to the NFL, and they just keep replenishing the talent. Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka. Oh, I didn't probably say his name right, but the next in line to be like the next great Ohio State receivers. Trayvon Henderson, another great running back. The question is who's going to play quarterback. Right now, it looks like Kyle McCord. He got some playing time, like during blowouts and whatnot last year. So we'll see when he comes in. Ohio State's going to be able to pretty much overwhelm almost every team on their schedule except for a couple. Like we talked about, Penn State, Michigan. They do play at Notre Dame. We'll see how that goes, but yeah, they're going to be right there like always. And then Penn State's the 3rd team in this triumvirate. I know, especially Andy's not a huge fan of James Franklin for sure, but they got a highly touted quarterback, Drew Aller, starting this year. I don't know if he got some playing time last year. He might have. I'll have to check on that, but he's a very highly regarded recruit. But he just wasn't going to play while Clifford was there because the whole respect of giving like a senior, like all the starts and whatnot. But if Aller is even as half as good as what they're claiming, Penn State's going to be a very good team because they're great on defense. Nick Singleton's one of the better running backs in the country, and they're loaded just like Ohio State and Michigan. So it's a 3-team race in the East Division without a doubt. So after that, you just feel bad for like Maryland, Michigan State, Rutgers, and Indiana. Like I don't even talk about Rutgers and Indiana. Like we talked about Rutgers a little bit earlier. I mean, their schedule is just brutal. Like all these teams in the East have to play those top 3 teams. So you're already starting with like 3 losses on your schedule. I'll just say about Michigan State. We talked a little about Mel Tucker being possibly on the hot seat. Like he had that unbelievable first year when they won. What was it? Yeah, they won 11 games, but it was like all smoke and mirrors. Like they won a lot of close games. It was basically off of Kenneth Walker, who's fantastic running back now in the NFL, and it's just kind of all come crashing down since then. They gave this guy $100 million, and he hasn't really done anything since then. Um, you know, After spring practice, their quarterback Peyton Thorne transferred to Auburn. You know, just a lot of not good signs with this team at all. So, not high on Michigan State again, and then playing in this tough division. Same with Rutgers and India. I think Rutgers could be okay if they played in the West, but playing in the East is just brutal. And then Indiana is just going to be horrible. Probably one of the worst teams in the conference. We don't even really need to talk about them. Um, and then when you flip over to the other side of the division or the conference in the West Division, very, very interesting scenarios here because you have a bunch of new coaches, bunch of like transfer quarterbacks, and we'll see how this all works. Like Wisconsin is bringing in Luke Fickell, great hire. We know we did at Cincinnati. They're bringing in Tanner Mordecai from SMU as their transfer quarterback, and they're going to run like an air raid offense. So like you just can't comprehend like Wisconsin running that kind of offense. It's just like slow, like ground and pound kind of attack. Well, here they are. They're going to do they're calling it the dairy raid instead of the air raid, which is kind of clever. But that's going to be interesting to watch. Fickle's a great coach, but again, it's like you're kind of transitioning from one system to another. Like, do you have like the right players to do that? We'll see. Iowa is always going to have a fantastic defense. They're going to try to win games like 13-10 every week.
Yeah.
They do get a transfer quarterback in from Michigan. Not McCarthy's at Michigan. The other guy that played last year at Michigan, his name escapes me at the moment. He was a transfer. I'll get it for you. Yeah, Cade McNamara. That's it. How could I forget him? He played it for a lot for Michigan. So the Iowa offense should be better, quote, should, but I mean, who knows? But even if they get a little bit of an offensive improvement, if they go from like 17 points a game to like 20, they're going to win a lot of these games because their defense is still going to be really good. We do know that. Um, yeah, Nebraska's bringing in a new coach with Matt Rule. Fantastic hire because he flamed out with the Carolina Panthers, but we do know he's a really good coach from his days at Temple and Baylor. So you got to give them a couple years because he likes to like kind of strip the program down and get like his guys in. So I wouldn't expect much from them this year, but definitely in a couple of years he'll have Nebraska really competitive. Illinois was one of the surprise teams last year with Brett Bielema. Has been doing a really good job, and they're just they're like the new Wisconsin. They're like a ground and pound like defensive type team. So they're going to kind of continue that strategy. I mean, their defense was one of the best in the country last year. So I don't think they're going to be as good, at least on defense anyway. They're going to have to step up their offensive game. But you can't deny the job that he's doing there. PJ Fleck at Minnesota, they're kind of again, a lot of the teams in this division kind of play the same kind of style. A lot of running and defense. They're definitely a run-focused team. But they do lose their quarterback, Tanner Morgan, but he wasn't having like a great year last year. And this Greek kid played in the bowl game, which was pretty impressive. Ethan Kali Kamanis. And he probably will put up similar numbers. And they get a nice transfer from Western Michigan, Sean Tyler, who should be a perfect fit for their running game. So the Big Ten West is really a toss up. I didn't mention Purdue, new coach. Obviously, we mentioned Brom going to Louisville. So they bring in the defensive coordinator from Illinois, Ryan Walters. So that great performance got him a new job and an upgrading job. And they have Hudson Card coming in as quarterback. But I think it's going to be a kind of a rebuilding kind of year for them. As they kind of get to their new accustomed to their new system. And then we won't even talk about Northwestern because they're the Indiana of the West Division. Just what a disaster what happened over there. So very interesting division. It's going to come down to Wisconsin and Iowa for me. And man, it's really, really tempting to pick Wisconsin. I just don't know what this offense is going to look like um, with the new system. So I'm going to go with the old steady. I'll go with Iowa. I don't know. I don't like it, but I think we'll stick with Kirk Ferentz. Get a little bit better on offense. Keep that defense going, and try not to win games 6-3 every week. So I'll go with the rematch of last year. I'll go Michigan and Iowa. Oh, I'm sorry, no, that was from 2 years ago. Last year was Michigan and Purdue. So I'll go Michigan and Iowa in the Big Ten championship.
It's another case of just don't fight it, John. Like, Iowa, like, you hate them, but they have their 7-9 wins. Just...
embrace it. You got to embrace the ugliness that is Iowa football.
What game was it where they were, what is it? They didn't have a touchdown or they didn't have a point. I can't remember what it was. They didn't
I'm just looking at some of their scores.
Like,
they won 7-3 against South Dakota State. They lost 7-10 against Iowa State. They lost 6-9 against Illinois. I mean, this is Big Ten football, baby. I mean, let's go. Like, this is great.
I think that's the game. They won 7-3, but the 7 was like 2 safeties and a field goal.
Yes, that's that's right.
That was ridiculous.
Like, that's Kirk Ferentz like right there. Like, that's how they want to play football at Iowa. But you can't deny it works for sure. But just a little bit of an improvement on offense, and I think they'll get it. I think they'll get there. Just like a side bit, they play Utah State week 1.
Mm-hmm.
Utah State team total under 7, under 3. Like, they might not score, so gonna get it on that.
Oh yeah. They'll make a certain, but I think we got a shot at that for sure. All right, let's get to the SEC final.
What were your picks, Dave?
Yeah. Forgot. Yeah. So I teased that. Despite we didn't really talk about Ohio State as much as I thought we would, but I think your assessments are pretty good. I do think Michigan's really got some steam, but having said that, I still am going to take Ohio State. Again, it's another case of just don't fight it. I just don't think they're that good. You did say they're going to overwhelm opponents. I think you're right. And it's just going to be simply due to sheer talent on their roster. I don't know. Ryan Day just doesn't do a good job in big spots. I guess I saw that in the college bowl season, and I'm just not into it. But that's not what it takes to win a conference championship. So I think Ohio State will win. Will at least get to the conference championship game. And same scenario as you with Iowa. Again, you could pick somebody else, and you could go on to regret it. I think Iowa will do a decent job this year. I think they're right there. They'll be right there. Certainly, there'll be some teams that could challenge that. Illinois probably got the best shot at it, but we'll see. It's sneaky good sometimes, some of these teams. So we'll see what's going on with the Big Ten in a few weeks, and we might be surprised. It might be some different teams that are stepping up to the plate here. So those are my picks. Yeah. Ohio State Michigan's going to be a good one this year, though. That's for sure. I think it'll be a fun one. We shall see. So on to the SEC, and here it is. The team that everyone says is the best that everyone has called the best in college football for years and years. No reason to think differently this time. Georgia and Alabama again going at it. Bama had what they would call a down year, but Bama still was good enough to make the New Year's Six. So how bad could they have been? But I do see that being a little different though, because it just definitely did seem a little off, and I think maybe because Bryce Young was hurt during a lot of that season, I feel like that had a lot to do with it. And Georgia coming off 2 championships, that's where it gets interesting. Now you're just talking about statistical probability. We have not seen a college football team win 3 straight, and if they have, it's been a really long time. Even winning 2 in a row is really extraordinary. You rarely see that.
I don't think. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I don't think they were mentioning the last team to win 3. It hasn't happened since the 30s or something, 1930. Maybe, might have been. I could be crazy. I think I heard Minnesota did it. I could be wrong about that, but it's been a really long time since a team has won 3 national championships. Yeah,
100%. It's absolutely not happened in my lifetime, and it's gonna be really interesting to see. So I just don't like those odds, but I do think they're gonna be very good. And same for Bama. I think they're going to be a solid team. I do kind of wonder when they are going to start to fade, because I feel like Saban's getting up there, and I just wonder. I just wonder. Saban's done a really good job staying staying with the scene, not letting the game pass him by, and that's amazing to think of that, because I think he's got to be like 70 something at this point. So what a great career he's had, and I don't know. It'll be interesting. The wild card here, I think, will be Tennessee, because they were solid last year and they're fun to watch. And Heupel's another guy that we've been down on over the years, but I do have to give him a lot of credit. He had a good team. He had a good team last year. So will they match those expectations in this season? I don't know. I mean, Tennessee's not, that's history's not on their side in that scenario, but they are a very talented team, and the recruiting ranking seems just similarly. So I think they'll be good. So I don't want to take too much of your time, John. I'll give it to you. Oh, and yes, you're right about A&M. Like the continuously disappointing A&M. Jimbo Fisher. Now there's a guy where the game's passed him by. Like, he's just,
Yeah, absolutely. His antiquated offense, from like 10 years ago.
yeah,
I think he might be the only person in college football that still runs plays out of the I formation at this
right.
point.
Yeah, there's a guy that needs to get with the times. So, John, let's give it to you for the SEC preview.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia, like you think, like, can they really win three in a row? Well, Dave, like it's like a one game regular season for them. Like, let me read you their schedule. Tennessee Martin, Ball State, South Carolina, UAB, all at home. At Auburn, all right, a little tricky, but they have a new coach this year with Hugh Freeze, so it's going to take them a little bit of time. Georgia's so much better. Kentucky at home, at Vanderbilt, Florida in their typical neutral site game, Missouri at home, Ole Miss at home. So their first, like, really true, I would say, losable game comes on November 18th at Tennessee. It's a one game season for them. It's crazy. They don't play any of the other uh, top teams out of the West division. So, and then they play Georgia Tech in their rivalry game. So they're going to be in the SEC championship game again, even if they somehow get picked off by one team. Like, they're not going to lose two conference games. Like, say they somehow like lost at Auburn, okay, they're not going to lose another game. Or if they lost at Tennessee, they're still not going to lose a second game. And then I think the rest of the division will at least have two losses. So they're gonna be in the conference championship game again. They're absolutely loaded. Obviously, like, their entire defense just got drafted to the NFL, but they're just gonna get reinforcements. I mean, Kirby Smart, like, what a job this guy's done. He was kind of like under the radar. Being at Alabama, you're kind of like a Nick Saban shadow, but here he is. Building a dynasty and like taking over the SEC at Georgia. Obviously they need to replace Stetson Bennett, but we all had question marks with him. I mean, he did end up proving a lot of people wrong with his performance for sure. But you're losing a experienced player like that. But we'll see what the next guy can do. It's projected to be Carson Beck, and Bowers is the best tight end in the country for sure. So you have that to lean on, and they're fabulous defense. And like I said, the schedule's not really that difficult for an SEC team. So they're going to be there at the end in Atlanta without a doubt. Um, you're right. The closest contender to them is Tennessee, in my opinion, in that division. But I don't think they're going to be quite as good as last year, just because I think Hendon Hooker was very undervalued. I think he was a really good quarterback, and I don't think Joe Milton is as good as Hendon Hooker. And you obviously need the right kind of quarterback to run Heupel's system, and I just don't think um, Milton is as good. So they're going to take a step back. They're still going to have a good year. I just don't think they're anywhere near as good as they were last year. And Georgia's going to be, even if they lost to Georgia, I still think. I'm sorry, even if Georgia lost to Tennessee, I still think Tennessee is going to take a couple losses elsewhere with their schedule. So I don't see them getting ahead of Georgia this year. And then the rest of the division is just kind of like we all know, Vanderbilt is usually the bottom of the conference. I mean, they're getting better. They ended up with 5 wins last year and pulled a number of upsets. So that's much better than what they've done in previous years. So Clark Lee is definitely building up the program, but maybe they'll make a bowl this year. But again, not close to Georgia. Missouri's done well, like in terms of recruiting. I just saw they just got a 5-star commit um, to come to Missouri, and they've had like some near close calls. I mean, they almost upset Georgia last year. So they had some talent on their team. So I think they can be a bowl team. They haven't done that's what they've been like the last 3 years is 6-6 every year. It's kind of what you see out of them again. Florida, we kind of talked about with Napier. I think they have a lot of problems on their offensive line, and then Graham Mertz is coming in to be their quarterback. Like I have a lot of questions there. Um, South Carolina is kind of they play typical Beamer ball. Shane Beamer is just like his dad. Like they win with special teams and like kind of crazy plays. Like Spencer Rattler is like really up and down. We saw that back from his time at Oklahoma and now at South Carolina. They got hit pretty hard in the transfer portal. So again, I think a lot of these teams are pretty close to each other. Kentucky was kind of projected to have a much better year last year than they actually did. They had a lot of injuries on their offensive line, but I think they're going to be a little bit better this year. They do lose Will Levis, but again, like he was not have a good season. They bring over Devin Leary from NC State, so I think that could actually be maybe an upgrade for them. But again, like these teams are all like around the 5, 6, 7 win mark, I would say, between like South Carolina, Kentucky, Florida, Missouri, and then Tennessee maybe like one step above them, but they're none of those teams are close to Georgia. So Georgia's gonna make the SEC title game again. The drama here is in the West Division with Alabama and LSU. Let's just get that out of the way. Like Texas A&M, no, like I don't see it. Jimbo Fisher and his antiquated offense. Bobby Petrino is here, former Louisville coach, former Atlanta Falcons coach for 5 games before he quit. Great offensive mind, but I've been reading that at the SEC media days, they kept asking, Jimbo Fisher, like who's calling the plays? Like, are you doing this or with the Bobby Petrino's offense? And like he was like deflecting like every
Wow.
question basically. So you're bringing in a great offensive mind, but you're not going to let him run his own offense. You're basically going to just have him call like your offense. Like Fish, it's not going to work if that's the case. And like Jimbo
Uh,
Fisher's ego is just way too big, and it's not gonna work. So let's count them out of the mix.
yeah.
Um, Auburn and Mississippi State have new coaches. Obviously, Mississippi State under the really sad situation with Mike Leach
Oh yeah.
passing, that they had to have a new coach. They promoted Zach Arnett from defensive coordinator, and he's going away from the air raid offense. So again, a team completely switching like offensive philosophies. Like you do really have the players to run that kind of system. Will Rogers is still there at quarterback, but like, does he is that going to fit like the new system of offense? It's more of like a pro style attack. So I don't know. I'm not seeing it for Mississippi State. They're probably an under. Auburn with Hugh Freeze, I think in due time, that's going to be a good hire for them. But it kind of slipped with under Brian Harsin. So it's going to take them a little bit of time to be competitive. I mean, they might pull an upset. Like I could honestly see them maybe beating Alabama in the Iron Bowl because that's always just a huge rivalry.
Yeah.
But in terms of like a season long projection, not really there with them. Same thing with Arkansas. Their defense was pretty poor last year. They do have KJ Jefferson is like kind of a mini version of Cam Newton. If you haven't seen him play, he's just a really talented player. But again, like they're a team that's going to score a lot of points, but maybe give up a bunch too. Raheem Sanders returns as well. And then you have Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin. I mean, he's been doing a pretty good job there. We always knew he was like a good coach. It's just all the other shit that kind of gets him in trouble. Um, they have a bunch of stars returning, 16 in total. Jackson Dart, he played at USC, right, Dave? He was there for a little bit.
Yep. Jackson's Art. That's right.
Yeah, he's
Yep.
still there, and they bring in Spencer Sanders from Oklahoma State as like kind of a backup or second option, and they have one of the most dynamic running backs in the country, Quinshawn Judkins. He was a freshman last year and just completely went off. They brought in another transfer from UTSA's Akari Franklin, who's one of the better wide receivers. So they're loaded with talent for sure. The question is, can they challenge the top two teams, um, Alabama and LSU? And that remains to be seen. So let's get to them. to Alabama and LSU. But
Yep.
so I say Ole Miss is probably like number 3 in my opinion, after Alabama and LSU, and then like Texas A&M. I'll put begrudgingly at like the 4th spot, maybe 5th. Like I am not a fan of this Texas A&M team. Let me tell you that much. Like in Fisher, but we already talked about that. But yeah, definitely Ole Miss after the top 2. Yeah, Alabama, like who's playing quarterback for them? Like that is a good question because I don't know. They brought in Tyler Buckner from Notre Dame. Like, is he really going to be their starting quarterback? They got this guy Milroe, Jalen Milroe, who played when Bryce Young was hurt last year. But if you remember, he's more of a running quarterback. Like he's not that gifted in terms of like his passing ability. And we saw that in a number of games. Maybe he improved that over the year, over the offseason. The receivers are definitely a downgrade and compared to what they had in previous years. Obviously, the run of receivers that they put in the NFL is unbelievable. Definitely don't think they quite have that. They're remaking the offensive line. Only 5 starters return on defense. I mean, I know that Bama really recruits well for sure, but when you lose a playmaker like Will Anderson, like that definitely is not an easy guy to replace. So I think Bama's there for the taking this year. Not saying they're going to lose like 6 games, but would not be surprised to see them have like another 2 or 3 loss season, which would basically keep them out of the SEC championship game and kind of like in that next, like last year, the New Year's Six bowl game. So that leads me to LSU. I mean, Brian Kelly and his family. I mean, they're here.
You mean the born and bred Southerners are in the?
That's right. My family is so happy to be here. It's got to work on his Cajun a little bit, but yeah, they're loaded again. Like Jaden Daniels, fantastic first year, and just think about it. Like they made the SEC championship game last year in his first year. Like putting all this talent together, he brought even in more transfers coming in from Power 5. Like they basically plugged their needs. With transfers through the portal, and like he's just recruiting so well. Like he's not like a good person for sure. Like that's been established over a number of years, but hell of a football coach, and he proved it. Last year making the SEC championship game, even with all like these new, like basically a new team last year, with all the guys that he brought in. He's even enhanced it this year. Harold Perkins, one of the best linebackers in the country. Like we got to watch out for on defense, but they're loaded in general, in basically every position. At Alabama is going to be tough because they're going to be looking for revenge for sure after that loss last year. But I think LSU is just a little better at this point. I think they can beat them again. And even if they lose, like I said, I think Bama could have 2 losses in the SEC. I mean, I don't know exactly. I mean, they could lose to Ole Miss, like I said. They could lose at Auburn. Like there's potential losses here. So I like this LSU team. I think they're going to win the West, and I think it's going to be a rematch of last year. I think it's going to be LSU and Georgia again, for the right to. I mean, they both make the college football playoff the way things are going.
Yeah.
But, I think that'll be your championship game again. And that week 1 game, LSU Florida State, that's going to be fantastic.
I'm looking for. Oh yeah, I really love where your head's at with LSU. I'm really high on them as well. I really think they could make some serious noise. Like they look good. Like I'm very excited about that team. We have some comments in the chat from Mississippi Dog, and who says that Mississippi State is really the team that could run the table. Went 9-4 last year with 21 out of 22 starters and the 2 deep returning, and a record-setting quarterback returning that may break NCAA passing yards record. So I'm looking at the schedule for Mississippi State, and it's definitely going to be, obviously, there's going to be a lot of weight to that. With, as we mentioned, Mike Leach died last year, and it was really sad news, But Arnett is certainly part of the system, so we know the system well. If I look at the schedule, I feel like it boils down to whether Mississippi State can upset either LSU and Alabama. They could. Yep. I could certainly see that one of the two happening, and if they do, then the rest of the schedule is like Western Michigan, Southeastern Louisiana, Arizona, probably would win that game since it's at home. And then Arkansas, as we were talked about, their defense is questionable. Auburn, Kentucky, and then we're all down at A&M anyway, so I feel like they'd probably beat them. And then you got the Egg Bowl, which has gone both ways over the years. So I don't know. I mean, I could certainly see 9 wins. I mean, run the table is definitely a big thing, but I don't know, John. I
Yeah, I
mean,
don't know about undefeated for them. I mean, it's all going to come down to like you'll know where they stand after September 30th because they'll
yeah,
have played both LSU and Alabama at home by then. So win those two games, you're sitting pretty. But we'll see. It's going to be tough with the whole new offensive system coming in, but we'll
yeah,
see.
yep,
Rogers is definitely a good quarterback. So
yep, 100%. So yeah, Mississippi Dog, thank you for your comments. Let's now go. And by the way, my predictions for the conference. I am very much in step. I think. Yeah, exactly the same. I'm like, like I said, sometimes you just don't want. I mean, and you'll see why I make these predictions in a few minutes when we. But I'm gonna go Georgia and LSU. Yeah, absolutely. Like even the worst case scenario for Georgia is still going to result in them winning 11 games. Like they're going to win 11 games. Like I can't see them going worse unless even if you had like the quarterback get hurt or like their leading pass rusher get hurt. Their depth is amazing. They've been dominating the recruiting rankings for the past 5 years. Like I really think this is the team to beat in all of college football. So yeah, 100%. Those are my two teams. Yeah. All right. So we are now at the point of the podcast where we can make our playoff predictions. Yeah, and I can see from John. I can see you shaking your head. I feel like we're gonna have some same old again. I mean, I'm looking. So I'll give it to you first. Who do you have for your top four?
I mean, this is tough because, like we said, the Big 12 and the Pac-12 could essentially just like eliminate themselves because of all the parity within the league, and then that would leave you with like 2 SEC and 2 Big 10 teams. Or I guess you could have an ACC team in there too. But I guess I'll go with more so what I want to see happen than what like it's actually going to happen. If that makes sense.
Okay.
I don't want to see two of the same conference. So that probably could end up happening, but we're gonna get rid of that. So I'm gonna say LSU, Florida State, Michigan, and USC.
That's going to be if that actually happened, that'd be a very exciting college football playoff. Like really fun.
Actually, you know what? I don't know if that can happen because LSU and Florida State play that first game.
Oh,
so,
okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's tough.
That's true. That's true.
May have to revise that because one of them's going to lose and they'll probably lose another game and like two losses isn't going to get you in. So
yeah,
I don't want to pick.
I don't
pick Clemson either. Ugh. Well, why don't you give me yours and then I can revise mine.
Okay, sounds good. So my 4, Georgia and LSU. How about that? And it's happened before. Like you've had Georgia and Bama make it together, even though Georgia beats Bama in the SEC championship game and so on and so forth, or vice versa. Ohio State, again, it's going to be the most reluctant pick of a team to make the college football playoff, but I'm like, but who's going to beat them? Like, Michigan's probably going to beat them, but I still think they can make it, even with that situation. And Clemson. And I don't love Clemson, but I also think they're due for some... I feel like they're due to make a comeback. I really think they've got the pieces to do it. And when you see everybody kind of down on the program, and I don't mean everybody, but like a number of people down on the program, I feel like that's their moment where they can kind of take that and ride the momentum. Like, everybody picked against us, and this year they'd be right. we didn't think that much of them this year. And I think they could make some noise. I think they're in for some definite improvement. You could totally see it. So, Georgia, LSU, Ohio State, and Clemson.
Yeah, and I know I just said I don't want to do 2 teams in the same conference, but it really makes sense to me now. Like it has to happen because I don't like Clemson. Florida State and LSU play each other. The Big 12 is going to knock each other out. And I think the Big 10, they're only going to get one team because those 3 teams, like I mentioned before, are going to kind of knock each other out. So I'll agree with you. Georgia, LSU, Michigan, and USC.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, Michigan, I think, of the 2, I feel like Michigan does have more upside. And even as we were talking about, the suspensions aren't going to be that big a deal. Like, that's really not going to affect. Remember, like, when Brady got suspended for 4 games and it was like, nobody cared. Like, he came back and they were fine. Like, it's just not going to make a difference at all, honestly. So, yeah, I love it. So, out of that, who's going to win? I mean, I
I don't
can't.
want to pick Georgia
I
to
don't
win for
either.
3 years in a row. Let's go with Brian Kelly and his family. LSU.
I'm all about it. I'm all about it. Let's go. I'm good with that. I picked Clemson, but that's just paper. I want LSU to win. That would be hilarious. I would enjoy that a lot more. So,
Yep.
all right, that's great. Like, what a fun playoff we could have if that all goes our way. So we'll see. So that's about it for our preview. I mean, it does look like a really great season, and it's probably the last year of college football that we've grown up with it. It's going to be a very different sport in 2024. So, but yeah, I mean, lots to look forward to.
Yeah, change is good and change is bad. Like it's pros and cons of everything.
Yeah.
I will, the 12-team playoff, how that'll be structured and formatted, and how they're going to do the rankings for that. Like, it's going to be fun to follow for sure next year. But yeah, we'll enjoy the last year with the 4 teams and the sham rankings that come out every week starting around Halloween.
Oh, those ranking. Oh, because I thought you were talking about like week 1, like which is like also Sheeran. Like,
Well, that's a sham too. Like it's kind of
why
like a perpetuating thing. Like, all right, you rank them all high, and then so
dumb. And the arbitrary methods that they use to do those college football rankings are just the worst.
Yeah.
Like, I want the computers back. Like the computers at least were consistent. Like, so it's going to be a fun year. And little footnote, I do believe I have an opening on that Saturday you talked about with the who was it, the MAC team against San Diego State? Like, was it?
Yes, San Diego State and Ohio. Is that the week 0 game you're talking
Week 0
about,
game,
right?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think I got that day open, so I'm gonna look into it. That'd be a fun trip. We'll see if it plays out.
Oh, you're gonna go to the game? Nice.
I might go to the game because that new that's the new Snapdragon Stadium.
No, that's right. Yeah, it's the Snapper, they're calling it.
Yeah, I've already driven by it.
The thing is, Dave, like there's no like game like FBS, but like there's an FCS game in Albany, and like I'm gonna be kind of in the area, so I might end up going to that. So maybe we'll both get to a game that day.
Nice. That'd be a fun day. I'll let you know. Yeah.
Yep.
Keep you all up to date. So yeah, final thoughts, John, on the season. It should be a fun one.
Oh no, I can't wait. Like you said, we're 10 days away from week 0 kicking off. So I know we probably won't do like an official preview and pick show for week 0, but looking forward to the season, Dave, and we'll have our contest starting. Me, you, Andy, and whoever else is going to be in the mix this year. So it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think so. I will try to. I won't put so much pressure to like make the shows like we were doing last year. So if you can make picks, if you can do the show, great. If not, I won't worry about it. We'll just have some fun with it. We'll just kind of talk about the games and do the thing. That's the best part of it anyway. All the rants from last week was my favorite part of the show.
Oh yeah. We're ranting about our bets that go wrong.
Absolutely. One last comment from Ian Angry. Thank you for hanging with us. Let's hope strength of schedule is overly considered when they change the format. I agree with you. That's a great idea. They really should.
Yeah, I mean it's all subjective now. Unfortunately, with this committee, like you need to have like raw, like data built into it. Like that's just like you can't argue which one way or the other. Like okay, this team played a tougher schedule than the other team. So I completely agree with that.
Yeah. Well, John, it's been great previewing these games. We'll meet again pretty soon. As maybe probably not for week 0, but week 1 we can definitely talk about it, or at least we can recap week 0, like when we get to that week, and we'll take it from there. Thanks again, John. Good luck to all your action. Are you going to do any like win totals this year?
Yeah, I'll probably do some. I have a list of ones I want to bet, but I haven't pulled the trigger yet. I kind of want to keep those separate from like my bets that I just like do daily stuff on. Like maybe I'll go on a different like site or something to do those, just because I'm like weird like that. I don't want to take the money from like I would bet like some baseball or golf or whatever, and complete that and just go on to a different spot. But yeah, I'll do some win total bets. Absolutely.
Cool. Well, good luck on those win total bets.
Yep.
I mean,
thank you.
Lots of good value out there, I think. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yep. All right, John. Thanks again. Have a great rest of your night, and all the best. Take care.
All right, you too, Dave. Thanks for having me.
You got it. John in Connecticut, folks. It was really great to have John back for all the scenarios. Good stuff. So yeah, we'll get back to our football talk, doing football picks, although more informal football picks this year. with non-mandatory picks. That's the plan. We'll see if it plays out. But so we'll keep that going. Thank you for tuning in. I have one last comment from Mississippi Dog. Can't wait to see Oklahoma and Texas play in the SEC. They are going to spend millions on players. It's a new era, my friends. Not in more ways than one. But thank you all for tuning in. My name's Dave Medina. You know me as Davey's Eating a Sandwich on this platform and other platforms like Instagram and TikTok and Threads, among others. You can join me for more chaotic fun in just a few minutes. I'm going to be back here at 11 o'clock tonight on Twitch. So twitch.tv/Davey's Eating a Sandwich if you're watching us live. I'll be playing golf with your friends, and you can play too. I'll tell you how to do it when we get over there and start that gaming stream over on the Twitch side. But thank you very much for tuning in. If you missed any part of it, the replay will be right here on YouTube or on or any podcast player of choice. You can find the Sandwich Corner, our podcast, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all major podcast platform players. We're going to keep doing this throughout the football season. So if you're looking for more gambling advice and ideas for who to pick during each week, we're going to give it to you from both the college football side and the NFL side. So stay with us all season long. In addition to that, we've got more interviews here in the corner. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time.